What happens when one of Britain's most cherished actors walks into what should be a warm, easy morning chat, only to discover that the host across from him is more interested in provocation than conversation? In just 37 seconds, a single careless remark about working-class roots would strip the polish off Lorraine Kelly's cheery TV persona, triggering one of the most unforgettable walkouts in daytime television history. The day had begun like any other inside the ITV studios. Sir Michael Caine, legendary actor, cultural icon, a man whose Cockney accent carried the weight of his working-class pride, had agreed to appear on Lorraine's show to discuss his latest film. At 89 years old, Caine had lived a life of impossible arcs, from poverty in London's East End to becoming one of cinema's most recognizable voices. Settling into the bright studio chair, he expected the usual morning pleasantries, softball questions, a bit of laughter, the safe rituals of daytime TV. Lorraine Kelly greeted him with her trademark smile, polished and practiced. "Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by the wonderful Michael Caine, who really needs no introduction." She turned toward him, the grin fixed, the rhythm smooth. "Now, Michael, you've had such an extraordinary career, spanning more than 60 years. Tell me, what still keeps you motivated at this stage of your life?" Caine leaned forward, eyes bright with the fire that had carried him through decades. "Well, Lorraine, it's the same as it's always been. I come from very humble beginnings in South London, and I've never forgotten where I came from. Every role, every project, it's about telling stories that matter to ordinary people. That's what keeps me going." Kelly nodded, but there was something in her eyes that betrayed impatience. Yes. Your background is well documented, the rags to riches story. But surely now, with all your success, you must feel quite removed from those early days. The question cut, subtle but sharp. Caine straightened, his voice calm but firm. "No, I wouldn't say removed. If anything, success makes me more appreciative of where I began. When you've known real struggle, real poverty, you don't forget it. It shapes who you are." Lorraine tilted her head, smile tightening. "Oh, come now, Michael. Isn't that a bit theatrical? I mean, you've lived in luxury for decades. Mansions, private jets, mixing with the elite. Don't you think clinging to this working-class image feels, well, disingenuous?" The studio air thickened. Even the camera crew felt the shift. Caine's jaw set, his voice low but controlled. "I'm not clinging to anything, Lorraine. I'm being truthful. Success doesn't erase your past. And it shouldn't. Growing up poor, watching my mother struggle to put food on the table. Those experiences made me who I am." Lorraine leaned back, crossing her legs with casual dismissal. "But don't you think your audience might find it tiresome? This constant reference to humble beginnings. How long can you really play that card?" The words landed like a gauntlet. Caine's expression hardened. "Play that card," he repeated slowly, his voice dropping into that unmistakable gravel that had silenced villains on screen for half a century. "Is that what you think I'm doing?" But Lorraine pushed forward, blind to the storm she was stirring. "Well, let's be honest. Every interview, every appearance, it's always the same story. Poor boy from London makes good. Don't you think it's time to move beyond that? Your fans might appreciate a bit more. Authenticity." The irony clung to the air. She was lecturing Michael Caine about authenticity. Caine's stillness became its own kind of power. Finally, he spoke. "You want authenticity? Authenticity is remembering the woman who raised you when no one else would. Authenticity is never forgetting the people who believed in you when you had nothing. Authenticity is holding on to your values, even when you're sitting in a television studio being told that your life story is tiresome." Lorraine's smile flickered, but she pressed on, the privilege in her tone unshaken. "Oh, I'm not saying your story isn't inspiring, Michael. I'm just suggesting perhaps audiences would rather hear about your current lifestyle, your successes today, rather than dwelling on the past. After all, that was a very long time ago." Caine's reply came like a hammer on steel. "A very long time ago. he echoed, his voice carrying that familiar, dangerous weight. For the first time, Lorraine seemed to realize she'd gone too far. But instead of softening, she doubled down. "Well, yes," she said, shifting in her seat, her composure straining against the silence in the studio. "I mean, you're a successful actor now. You've been knighted. You've won Oscars. You own homes around the world," Kelly pressed, her tone sliding further into condescension. "Surely those early struggles are just ancient history by now." Caine's hands, resting on the chair's arms, curled slowly into fists. Not out of rage, but out of the measured control of a man who had spent a lifetime proving himself to people who never once had to prove themselves. "Ancient history," he repeated barely above a whisper, yet his words carried more force than if he'd shouted them. "Is that what you call the experiences that shape a human being?" Kelly gave a light, patronizing laugh, the sound slicing through the tension. "Oh, now don't get defensive, Michael. I'm only trying to give you the chance to talk about your current projects, your current life. Our viewers would much rather hear about the glamorous Michael Caine of today than dwell on old sob stories from decades ago." The phrase sob stories landed like a blow. A ripple of discomfort spread through the studio crew. Even the youngest production assistant understood that Kelly had stepped into dangerous territory. Caine's piercing blue eyes fixed on her. Unblinking, he studied her face as though seeing her clearly for the very first time. When he finally spoke, his voice was deliberate, each word weighted by decades of hard-earned truth. "Sob stories," he said slowly. "You think the story of a woman working 3 jobs to keep her children fed is a sob story? You think the story of a boy who left school at 15 to put food on his family's table is a sob story? Michael, please don't twist my words," Kelly interjected, though her voice carried a faint quiver now. But Caine didn't flinch. His composure was unshakable. "I'm not twisting anything. I'm repeating what you said. You dismissed the very experiences that made me who I am. You implied that remembering where I came from makes me disingenuous. You implied that authenticity means forgetting your roots." Kelly shifted in her chair, her practiced smile cracking. For the first time, she seemed to sense the hole she'd dug. Yet instead of apologizing, she reached for control the only way she knew how. Condescension. "Look, I think you're being a bit oversensitive. This is morning television, Michael. We're supposed to be having a light, fun conversation. You're making this far too serious." "Oversensitive?" Caine echoed. There was danger in the way he said it. Danger wrapped in calm. He leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, Lorraine, have you ever gone to bed hungry? Have you ever watched your mother cry because she couldn't afford shoes for her children? Have you ever been spoken down to, judged as worthless? Because of how you talked or where you came from?" Kelly's mouth opened, then closed again. She had no answer. She had never known hunger, never felt the weight of shame imposed by others. Her life had been one of comfort, good schools, and television opportunities. She had never had to fight for survival. "Well, that's not really the point," she stammered, her confidence unraveling. "The point is, you've overcome all that. You're successful now. Why dwell on the negative?" Caine leaned forward, eyes locked on hers. His voice dropped to a steady, commanding rhythm. "It's not negative, Lorraine. Those experiences taught me empathy. They taught me humility. They taught me to value hard work and genuine connection. They taught me that success means nothing if you forget the people who helped you along the way. But I suppose someone who's never struggled wouldn't understand that." The words sliced clean through the air. Kelly flushed crimson, her composure slipping entirely. "That's completely uncalled for," she snapped, her voice rising. "You don't know anything about my life or what I've been through." "You're right," Caine said evenly, his voice returning to a calm, measured tone. "I don't know your life, but I know what you've shown me today. I know you think poverty is a sob story. I know you think authenticity is something to be doubted. I know you believe success should erase where a person came from." Kelly opened her mouth to interrupt, But Caine silenced her with a small lift of his hand. His words came with the weight of final judgment. And most importantly, I know you believe you can sit there, in your comfortable chair, and dismiss the lives and struggles of not just me, but millions of working-class people who have fought their whole lives for a fraction of what you take for granted. The studio remained frozen, the silence pressing in on everyone present. Even the sound of the cameras seemed too loud, the quiet hum filling the void left by words that could not be unsaid. Kelly's pleading tone hung in the air, a stark contrast to the smug confidence she had worn at the start of the interview. Caine stood tall now, his frame still commanding at nearly 90 years old, his presence filling the studio in a way no camera angle could capture. He looked down at her with calm finality. "Lorraine," he said evenly, "you don't get to dismiss a person's life story and then ask them to smile and sell a film. That's not how it works, not with me." Kelly blinked rapidly, as if trying to reset the moment, to pull the conversation back under her control. "But Michael, the viewers," Caine interrupted, his tone still calm but carrying the weight of a hammer blow, "are far smarter than you give them credit for. They don't need more empty chatter about premieres and red carpets. They need truth. They need connection. And right now they've just seen the truth about you." Kelly's face went pale. Around the studio, crew members exchanged anxious looks. No one dared step in. Caine placed his hands flat on the table for a moment, leaning slightly forward. "You sit here every morning, pretending to care, pretending to listen. But listening isn't nodding along until it's your turn to talk again. Listening is respect, and respect is something you failed to show me, or the people I represent, since the moment this interview began." Kelly's lips parted, but no words came. Her rehearsed composure had abandoned her completely. Straightening, Caine adjusted his jacket and smoothed the lapel with deliberate care. "So no, Lorraine, I won't sit here and let you turn the struggles of millions into sob stories. I won't let you dress up condescension as conversation, and I won't let you waste my time." With that, he pushed his chair fully back and stepped out from behind the table. The sound of his footsteps against the studio floor echoed like a gavel, striking down judgment. Kelly half rose from her seat, her voice breaking as she reached for him. "Michael, wait, please. We can fix this. Just stay. We can talk about the film, I swear." But he didn't look back. Caine paused only long enough to remove his jacket microphone and place it neatly on the table. The gesture was quiet, precise and devastating. Then, without another word, he turned and walked off the set. For a moment, the entire studio seemed to hold its breath. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of Lorraine Kelly sitting alone beneath the harsh studio lights. Her smile gone, her mask shattered. It would become one of the most replayed, dissected, and unforgettable walkouts in British daytime television history. Caine paused at the edge of the set and turned back, not out of anger, but with the weary sadness of a man who had seen this scene play out too many times before. "You still don't see it, do you?" he said softly, the quiet carrying more force than any shout could. "This was never about a film. It was never about me promoting another role. It was about something far simpler. Basic human dignity. The kind you can't fake with polished words and studio lighting." He took a measured step forward, his voice gaining strength. "I've worked alongside the finest storytellers of my generation. I've shared rooms with presidents and kings. And do you know the people who leave the deepest impression? It's not the powerful. It's the ones who carry their scars with pride. The ones who remember the nights they had nothing, yet never forgot the value of everything. That's what makes people worth listening to. That's what makes their stories matter." Kelly shrank back in her chair, her notes useless now, her silence betraying how deeply his words had cut. Caine studied her for a moment longer, his expression grave. "But you wouldn't understand that," he continued, "because you've never had to fight for your voice to be heard. And until you learn what that fight feels like, you'll never truly listen to anyone else's." The room was frozen, the cameras still humming as if afraid to interrupt. Caine straightened his jacket with practiced grace, then turned and began walking toward the exit. His footsteps rang against the studio floor, each one echoing finality. No one dared follow. No one dared breathe. At the door, he stopped once more, his back to her. His words, when they came, were calm but edged with pity. "Good luck with the rest of your show, Lorraine. Maybe one day you'll learn the difference between giving someone airtime and giving them respect." And with that, Michael Caine walked out, leaving behind a silence so thick it felt suffocating. Kelly remained frozen in her chair, the cameras catching every flicker of her stunned expression. In less than a minute, her authority had collapsed, her carefully built persona dismantled. All it had taken was a single refusal, a refusal to be diminished, a refusal to let arrogance pass unchallenged. In 37 seconds, Michael Caine had redrawn the line between power and principle, and everyone watching knew exactly which side he stood on.